This is On Air.
What are some tactics or tools that you feel like are effective in reaching the middle, or more so just an audience that may not agree with you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's twofold, right? So in my own kind of work in artistry, I'm very much so talking to folks who I see myself represented in, right? So but for my day job, I have to message to these folks who tend to be undecided on things. And really the approach that the Opportunity Agenda uses is values. So connecting with, kind of the most grounded principles as to how people see themselves. At the end of the day, everybody says this, at the end of the day, we're all the same, right? So I was already telling Akil, I'm obsessed with Queer Eye.
I love that show. Yes, I've gone through 6 out of 8 of them.
Really invested and very emotional with the first episode.
Yeah.
It's like this 57-year-old white man from the Deep South who cried when, the 5 queer men left. And he's like, these are my friends now. And that to me just shows, at the end of the day, like we all want to connect on that humanistic level. So that's the approach that we come from. Like we start with, okay, so what do these folks care about? What is the entry point into the issue area? And then we start talking about, so this is how we're falling short of this thing that you care about. Like this is why you should care about, trans kids. This is why you should care about school to pipeline issues, and this is what we can do about it. And here's how you can act. So particularly working in social justice, we're always trying to drive them to do a thing, right? So it has to be an action attached to every single thing that we do. But we walk them through kind of holding people's hands through a process of like, you care about this thing. Let's show you how much you care about this thing. Oh, did you not know about that? Oh, guess what? Here's what you can do about it. Take action now. So yeah, I mean, that's just my day-to-day of what I do, particularly right now around major issues such as immigration is big, criminal justice reform, the economy. So we're hearing a lot from the administration about and misinformation about the economy from the administration.
Yeah, misinformation.
And racial justice is, a through line in human rights of a lot of what we do. So that's essentially what we, I shape every single day to talk about.
It sounds like the way you're describing reaching an audience in terms of thinking about what they care about is very strategic.
Yes.
Would you say it's strategic and or manipulative?
I would prefer strategic. I definitely last summer had a conversation with somebody, my coworker and I randomly met, and he was like, oh, so you guys do mind control? We were like, well, okay. Well, we didn't think about it that way. But, really what's interesting about the internet is it's just brain science. Like my job is to find out every day how people consume information, what they do with that information, where people live on the internet, and how to message to them on those platforms. So like folks who are more Instagram people or Snapchat people communicate very differently than people do on Twitter and Facebook. So I'm constantly just trying to figure out what people's habits and patterns are, and then using that to speak to them really on their level and in a way that's gonna connect with them.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Jamila. And Akil, how about you? In terms of when you're creating film or content or your work, how much do you consider your audience when you're crafting this?
I'm about to say, it's fascinating listening to Jamila talk, because social media is like almost like it's not a newer medium because it's been around for a while, but it's such an influential medium that I'm trying to learn as much as I can, because in terms of making a film, you have to use that to be able to reach audiences outside of whether it's festivals or a corporation like Vice. So previously, my first film was about the school to prison pipeline. So my focus was on 13 and 12-year-olds, where typically that's the most at risk for dropping out, is the transition from middle school to high school. So that was like my first vantage point in just trying to focus on someone who's going to be viewing the content that you're providing. But in terms of moving on in my career, festivals were actually the ones that kind of fund or can get you to that next notch in your career in terms of being able to make the next film. So not just like a middle school, but someone that, whether it gets in a Netflix or elsewhere, that's going to be part of your branding and focus for making it. But I felt like that was kind of problematic, because you're really trying to make that for people who aren't directly impacted by the documentary that you're making in terms of social justice.
Right.
And in working at Vice or like at a larger corporation, they're trying to get ad revenue and sales. That's the bottom line. So it kind of, depending on where your target or what your community is, you kind of have to leverage all of these different tools to reach that audience. So I mean, long story short, especially if you're doing a story around social justice, I feel like you have to do justice to the people that you're actually working towards.